But we've really kind of focused on the idea of, I guess, two really separate ideas. The first is building modular building blocks for people to build on. I think the thing that we saw missing in the world today was a lot of the financial providers, whether it's your banking as a service guys, Stripe, you name it, anyone you can think of, they tend to want to build walled gardens. They tend to want you to just solely exist in their ecosystem, have everything there. And if it doesn't exist there, tough luck. We kind of have the opposite ethos where our logic has always been, hey, we built a whole bunch of cool things. You're probably only care about like one, maybe two of those cool things, but we built six of them. So we'd rather build our infrastructure where it works closer to like Silly Putty or Play-Doh. Like you can wrap it around and use it to plug whatever gaps you need plugged rather than doing that. So that's kind of the first philosophy. The second is just one API for any payment rail you could ever think of. Really simple ethos, a lot harder to pull off in practice, unfortunately. But we have, I think, probably north of 10 plus payment rails domestically in the US. You know, we can push money to Zelle, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, Amazon gift cards, prepaid debit cards, ACH, RTP, basically anything you can think of. And we're starting to expand internationally. Traction wise, you know, I think we're at we've done over 60,000 payments total, transactions total today. We're growing, I think on average 40-50% month over month over the last 4 months, which has been really exciting. And our customers, you know, I think maybe this is different than a lot of other folks that you've talked to. It's just a very horizontal space where we have, you know, the more traditional gig economy companies come in on our platform. You know, there's a company out in Ohio called Cooking Genie that lets you rent kind of a chef to come into your house and cook meals for you. Super cool, right? They use us to power payments to their genies, what they call their chefs. Then like kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have another customer who's maybe my favorite customer, though this is public, so maybe I shouldn't have said that. But it's a company called Don't Tell Comedy. I think they've been around since 2017, 2018, good amount of TikTok following.
Yeah.
They do like secret comedy shows throughout the US. And they use us to pay their comedians. They use us to pay their producers for all of these shows, like just direct to their Venmo, stuff like that. And like this was a world where a lot of these comedians before us, one of two things happened. Either the producer was given a lump sum of cash and the hope was like, hey, they're probably a good person. They'll probably pay the comedians what they're owed. Or you had to like mail each comedian a check, which is just not how the world should work in 2020. And then kind of going off into an entirely third example, we have just started to partner with one of the biggest personal injury law firms in the United States to handle payouts for personal injury cases, winnings. I don't know what the we receive if you win a personal injury lawsuit. So like, it's just a ridiculously horizontal space. We end up talking to a lot of cool companies just because of that modular ethos where we can kind of plug and play in so many different ways that someone always finds what they want in us.
Is plugging and playing in this kind of modular, you know, environment, is that due to the technology you built?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And as you're plugging in and moving to different companies, how much work goes into, you know, customizing it for each company and consumer you work with? Because a law firm's different from a gig economy versus a comedy. What would you call that? A comedy institution? I don't know what you'd call
Comedy network.
comedy network. Yeah.
I think they've built their own category, which is awesome. But I have no idea. I'll let you know if they ever give me the right terminology on how to refer to them.
Yeah. But what work goes into making those slight adjustments? Because, you know, we think of, or at least I think of technology as very linear. You know, there's certain versions and iterations of it over time, but I think a lot more companies are using this customizable approach as they progress and as they grow. And so it seems way more dynamic than a linear approach. Yeah. What goes into that work?
Yeah. So it's almost a bit of a philosophical question as well as is like a practical one.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone has their ideal world, but and whenever you have these sales calls, and I'm sure you'll relate to, they will just tell you, this is my ideal world. Can you make it happen? But like half of those bullet points are things they don't actually care about, just are marginally convenient.
Sure.
And so obviously, for personal injury for that law firm, like we had to build something very, very custom. There's very strict rules on how that money can move. And if you screw up, the attorneys themselves get disbarred. And, we're not particularly in the business of ruining people's livelihoods. So like in circumstances like that, we're just very willing to go and get into the nitty gritty and allow for more flexibility. I think that the key point here is if there's something where it's like, okay, this is a nice to have, not a need to have, we just fundamentally, we are still, a relatively small seed stage company. It's going to be lower in the priority queue and we'll get to it soon, but not immediately. But for each of kind of these customers where it's the law firm or for Cooking Genie, we had to do some very specific KYC kind of customization there. If it's something where we're clearly like, this helps the modularity of our product, this allows us to make sure we serve kind of this customer base that has this unmet need, and it's clear that these features must hit those needs. I think we've built an org from day one that doesn't view technology as like a linear path. It views it as these are priorities, this will make these people happy, and I will take on the ownership to make sure this gets done, right? Like the entire flow for the law firm, which was basically, for all intents and purposes, an entirely separate product. Like we wrote found two new providers and wrote integrations with them and customized the fund flow just for this law firm. We had one of our developers, the first customer I referred to earlier, it took him a week and a half. Like he just decided that this was important. He was alone on the project and he banged it out.
Wow.
And I think that's really kind of the philosophy that we've had is if you can convince us it's important and it'll be done.
I love that. Is now, I'm assuming, once you kind of create a product for the certain category or industry, is this kind of what you feel is going to grow that category? So now that you've done one law firm and understand the components that are necessary, both for compliance and for legal sake, now you can maybe potentially grow that funnel of business?
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably give it a couple months just to be very sure.
Sure.
Or once we're very confident that we've done everything correctly. Absolutely. And I think not only that, but this is kind of what I was alluding to when I said it was a philosophical discussion. Because we place such a high emphasis on modularity, some of the connections that we built just for this law firm are now independent modular pieces we can offer separately to everything else. And so it's really nice because it's almost like, I guess the best analogy I can draw is like, it's almost like playing Pokemon. Like you're like, I had to catch two more to be like whatever leader I'm running against, but now these guys just are useful forever.
Yeah. Yeah. With, I'm from a lot of startup philosophy, it's always like focus on one product or one core, your one core product and one core customer at a time, but you're kind of, from what I'm hearing, taking a different approach. Where do you see, like, in terms of growth, is it going to be difficult to focus in one direction and grow? Or do you see the expansion of horizontally as your path to growth and the application of your product kind of, and as it excels and you kind of get more customers? Where do you see that? Because I know it's kind of against the typical philosophy.
It is, and it isn't, right?
Yeah.
That typical philosophy is, YC, like written in stone as you walk into the building.
It's a command.
Like it's that, like pick a niche within the niche. Don't go outside the niche until you're really sure you want in that niche.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with that philosophy. I think we just had a different spin on it, which is pick a problem. Like don't worry about an industry per se, but like everyone has this problem, right? Everyone is unhappy to a certain extent with using their banking as a service, or to a certain extent not being able to pay out people with Venmo or have to do it by themselves, right? I mean, Uber's dealt with it, Lyft's dealt with it. And if those guys run into those problems, everyone does, right? And Airbnb dealt with it so much that they went and got like a money transmitter license by themselves just so they could move money however they needed to. Because they were like, all right, forget this. We're just going to do this ourselves, right? And so when it's this big of a problem, yes, at surface level, especially when you're a seed stage company, a lot of these customers seem eclectic and unfocused and maybe make you go like, are you really focusing on a niche? But I think at a macro scale, what we're really just saying is like, here's this like almost null zone where all the existing solutions dare not enter right now.